Hi to everyone who is watching today. Thank you so much for taking your time to watch this video on why do people lie. I think it's a fascinating topic because we often deal with feeling betrayed in life, and most people who are attracted to this topic are probably attracted to it because you've been lied to. But I'm here to talk to you not only about why someone in your life may have lied to you, but also to help you identify how and why you may use lying in your own life, because that's what it's all about, is personal development and growth. So thanks again for joining. My name is Dawn Wiggins. I'm a licensed marriage, family, and therapist, and I'm also a speaker and a writer. I love to speak and to write because I can reach more people than I can from just the office, one client at a time. So we're going to jump into the topic, and I'm going to start by sharing with you a shocking secret from my past. In my teenage years, I had a short career as a shoplifter, which to some of you may be shocking because I come across as much more of a goody two-shoes today. So even though I am a reformed shoplifter, I want to talk to you today about why I was willing to sacrifice my integrity and I was willing to lie and to steal to get what I wanted. What I'm here to tell you is that all lies, unless they're compulsive, like based on a underlying mental health issue, or it's coming from a sociopath who has no conscience, all lies lead back to difficulty coping with emotions. So that basically means that people lie to cope with insecurity. They may lie to perpetuate denial. They may lie to avoid painful feelings. But when you break it down, it often goes back to fear and anxiety or grief. So there's a particular author and therapist. His name is Robert Moylan. And he talks about the ways to cope with human emotions as fear, grief, joy, and relief, these four basic emotions. And I'm going to talk to you today about how fear and anxiety and grief are a lot of the things that lead to lying and how we can address those things. So let's take a deeper look at the shoplifting issue as an example. As a teenager, I didn't have much in the way of material possessions. So that included like resources for college. So I earned scholarships and I worked full time throughout college. So I often was fearful about money, but I was also fearful about fitting in, like having the right clothes and the right handbag or whatever it was. And so I got this brilliant idea with my friends that we would steal. And so what I was doing there was I was finding a quick fix to my feelings, my underlying feelings of fear and insecurity or anxiety about money or being accepted. So obviously this was not a great long-term strategy because I ended up getting arrested, which led to really high levels of anxiety. Welcome, Dagmar.
Hi, Dawn.
It's great to have you.
Thank you.
I was telling a riveting story about my short career as a criminal.
I read that.
So thank you, Dagmar, for joining us as our co-host. If you want to introduce yourself, I would love that.
Sure. Hi, everybody, and thank you so much for having me, Dawn. I'm an international SEO strategist, coach, and consultant, and I just newly the co-founder of Social Monster together with Scott Johnson, and we really want to help entrepreneurs, small and medium-sized business to generate demand and leads online. Isn't that what we all need, right?
It is something that we all
need. And I think it's so interesting with the topic today, lying, right? Because in my industry, internet marketing, there is a fine line in lying or not saying everything. Because as I started, a lot of times I heard it's the consumers or it's the buyers' decision if they want to buy this product or not, and they have to educate themselves enough to make that decision, right? At the same time, I knew when I looked at the product if it was bad or if it was helpful. So it's interesting what we tell ourselves, what is a lie and what isn't a lie.
Okay, so I think that we'll touch on that topic a little bit later on when we talk about insecurity in depth. But I was basically breaking down for everyone that most lying, unless it's sociopathic or an underlying mental health issue like compulsive lying, lying is primarily, it originates from poor coping with our feelings. And so the primary feelings that would drive lying would be fear and anxiety or grief. So fear and anxiety is one of those things, one of those feelings that drives insecurity. And so when we're looking at insecurity and how insecurity is the birthplace of a lot of lies, we could think of the job seeker who is wanting to be hired and they don't want to be rejected, so they might lie, or a child that's seeking their parents' approval, or a dating couple that wants to be loved or liked. And so insecurity is one of those feelings that if we don't cope with it properly, it drives lying. Instead of being vulnerable and deciding to work it through collaboratively, sometimes we might choose, again, the quick fix, the instant gratification, which creates the feeling of relief in the moment, but long term, it creates a problem because we're creating relationships that don't have trust in them.
Right, and it's really, you create something what is really not real. So it like, I don't know how you say that in English, but like when you play cards in Germany, they say that the house of cards can break easily.
Yes, it all falls down, the house of cards. You got it. So insecurity is fear and anxiety, and that's one of the major feelings that drives lying. A manipulative person that lies is very similar. They want something and they're willing to go to any lengths to get it, including manipulation and lying. And it's ultimately about fear and anxiety of rejection or not getting what you want. And so some of you might be thinking, well, but doesn't anger play a part in this? Anger is always a secondary emotion to a more vulnerable emotion. So even though someone might use anger to be aggressive and to integrate or weave the feeling of anger into whatever it is that they're trying to accomplish, it's ultimately underneath there is fear and insecurity, vulnerability. And so when we take a look at the manipulative person that might be cheating or lying, it's ultimately because they're afraid that if they don't get what they want, they either won't feel okay or their life won't be okay. So that's why someone might manipulate to lie. But again, it all boils back down to fear and anxiety. Now, the interesting one that I want to talk a little bit more about is grief, because you might not consider that grief is a feeling that would cause someone to lie. But grief is a feeling that often causes denial. And so when we don't want to feel grief and we don't deal with grief in a healthy way, meaning grief is the loss of something that gave us joy. So whether it's a job, a spouse, an animal like a pet, or a possession, whatever it is, it's the loss of joy, whatever it was that was creating that feeling of joy. So if we don't want to feel that loss, a lot of times we may embrace denial as a coping mechanism to not have to deal with the feeling of grief. So when we're living in denial, we're actively living in a lie. It means that we're not dealing with reality as it is. So some of the lies that would go with denial could be related to something like abuse, addiction, codependency, or death. So those lies might sound like, I can control the drinking, or I could have prevented this person's death, or my abuser loves me, so it's okay, or I like to help others. That's what codependents frequently can be heard saying. I just love helping people. But these are all, when they're in the scope of denial, they're lies at the cost of personal honesty. So we've taken a look at how lying can sometimes be with others in order to get something that we're afraid we don't have. But then there's also the lies with ourselves that ultimately cause us to live in denial. both are really important. I think the second one about denial is what I really want everybody to hear about, because if you're attracted to this topic, I'd be curious to know if people were attracted because they felt betrayed and they want to understand about why someone would lie to them. But because we can only control ourselves and our own personal growth, I want everyone to consider how denial or their own insecurities might be driving lying in your own life, and where that's an opportunity for personal growth.
Yeah. What you just said, it's interesting. Like, my parents were so different, right? My dad would never lie. And we were raised Catholic, so he taught us, if you lie, you will burn in hell, right? And so we as little children, I tell you, we never lied because we did not want to burn in hell. And my mom was so opposite. She believed in the white lies, so she tried to lie to get her will, or to get around stuff, or to not saying something, which at the end is a lie, because then you hold information back.
A lie of omission, absolutely. That's manipulation, yes.
So it was interesting to grow up with a father totally against lying, and we never lied, and with a mom, we knew she's lying to get her will. So it's confusing.
So fear of conflict. And that's, again, so it's all boiling down to a difficult time managing painful feelings. So mom, in that instance, was afraid of conflict. And so she did what she could to not have it all blow up, right? So ultimately, it's about learning how to deal with emotional discomfort, learning to face the painful feelings and work them through instead of avoiding them. So let's say for the job seeker who is maybe not completely honest and they're manipulating their resume or their interview, it's about trusting that there is an employer out there who really is interested in you as the employee. And it's about you believing in yourself that you're the gift, and that you have something to offer whoever your employer is. Same thing in the world of dating. So often in the first few months of dating, people are not their authentic selves because they want to put their best face forward. However, just like Dagmar mentioned earlier, we're not then creating a real relationship, and someone ends up feeling betrayed down the road. So instead of relying on little white lies or lies of omission when you're in your early dating life, the stretch would be to embrace the discomfort, the vulnerability that comes with total honesty, and to trust that what you're building in that instance is an authentic relationship that's going to lead to long-term security and trust. And you'll avoid landing on my sofa for couples therapy down the road. So it's the same for children who want their parents' approval. And when I talk about children who want their parents' approval, I'm not just talking about small children, I'm talking about kids of any age. And I even mean like my parents with their approval, or me with my parents' approval, right? I spent a huge majority of my 20s telling certain members of my family what they wanted to hear because I didn't want to be rejected or cut off or judged. And so I was having dishonest relationships. And I think that applies to a lot of people in families, whether it's about religion or relationships or sexuality, that when adult children have a hard time being their authentic selves in their relationships with their family, it's because they really feel that they might be rejected for something that's really important to them. And like you said, Dagmar, your dad was Catholic, and that was that. And so there was no room to be anything but Catholic. And so it would probably be very difficult for your mom or for any of you to embrace something other than that without getting his anger or his rejection. And I think that's part of learning to have an honest, authentic relationship as adults, developing our own identity and trusting that, and developing a security in who we are, and believing that I am the gift. You, Dagmar, are the gift. To each of you that's watching this video today, you are the gift. And when you embrace dishonesty, in order to soothe your fear or your anxiety about rejection or fitting in, you're removing you as the gift from the world. We don't get the opportunity to know the real you, the you that has the power to live and love and leave your unique stamp on this world. And so that's really what this talk is about. You may have come in because you felt betrayed at some point in your life, but I hope you leave hearing that you have an opportunity to embrace honesty in a different way so that you can be your authentic self.
Yeah. I like what you just said about your authentic self, right? My deceased husband, he was such a soft man, such an angel, and he could not tell his dad when we wanted to go on a vacation for a week because they had a little farm and he felt guilty to leave the little farm and leave his dad alone. And at the end, everything could be organized if he wouldn't have lied or not saying it for such a long time. So he normally said it like the night before we would go on a vacation. So his dad had no chance to organize anything. And he was so upset. And then he went, my deceased husband went with me on the vacation. He felt guilty the whole time. So it was just a devastating thing, but he could not change that because the fear was so much bigger than anything else.
So that's a really important thing that you just brought up, Dagmar, is that when we cope with fear and insecurity by lying, it relieves the feelings temporarily, but then what it creates is a bag of guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm suggesting, being authentic, being vulnerable, being honest, that can sound really, really scary. Like, especially to the person who's dating or to, the person who's gay and they haven't come out yet. We're talking about, for, anyone, whatever it is that they don't feel comfortable sharing with the people they love or the world. We're talking about terrifying acts of bravery or courage here. And it may sound crazy to abandon this reasonable skill set of avoiding those feelings by just telling little white lies or omitting little details. But ultimately, we're creating piles and piles and piles of guilt. And so the long-term strategy of being authentic and developing a sense of self-worth and identity based on who we truly, truly are, then when we feel joy and relief, that joy and relief is without the bags of guilt. And it's a long-term strategy, don't get me wrong. It's not enough to just watch this video and understand and recognize, oh, I understand now. It really takes hard work and practice to do it differently and to get okay with the discomfort of vulnerability. And I'm not here to blow smoke up your skirt and tell you that it comes overnight. But it's a long-term strategy that ultimately leads to peace and satisfaction and healthy relationships where we can feel secure and we don't have to carry around the bags of guilt or shame.
Yeah, and living your own life.
Yeah, instead of someone else's.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Having identity.
Yeah.
So I'd love to take any questions or comments from anyone who's joining us live today. If there's anything that you would like to know or anything you'd like to add, or if anybody wants to call in, I'd love to have you. Otherwise, you can see a little bit more about this topic on my blog post, which is on my website, dawnwigginstherapy.com, where this blog about why people lie is posted. If you want to get to know me a little bit more and you're curious if therapy is something that you're interested in, you can also schedule an on-the-house consult on my website. That's an opportunity for you to have a 30-minute free phone session with you and I so that you can ask any questions you might have about therapy, get to know each other a little bit better, and decide if it's a step that you're ready to take. And I welcome doing any of those. The last thing I would encourage anyone watching to do is to go to my website and sign up for my newsletter once a week. I know we all get tons of mail in our inboxes, and sometimes it can be a drudgery to delete all of those, sales emails. But once a week, I do send out a newsletter, and I write it from my heart and soul. And I like to think that there's a lot of little cookies in there for you, little gems of inspiration and things to help carry you through your week. So head to my website and sign up for the newsletter, and I'd love to have you there as part of your group.